Well, in this video, I'd like to take a different approach to how you can use drumming to help with focus. In all the videos I've done in the past, I really am just playing the drum, letting you listen to it. I'm playing at about 8, 9, 10, up to 12 beats per second to get the brain engaged. And I'm playing rhythms that are unpredictable that you have to decipher. And it's that process of needing to decipher what's happening. Not knowing what's happening. A novel stimulus will get the brain engaged, and you'll have more activity, and then your focus improves. And in this video, I'd like to approach it a little differently and really go back to the very beginnings of where I discovered how it would help me focus. So rewind to the 80s, early 80s, I was at the Musicians Institute in Los Angeles, Percussion Institute of Technology. I think I was in their second percussion class, second or third. I started in 1982. Anyway, part of the curriculum there, it was all designed towards taking, drummers and really drilling technique. And a lot of us who were there were interested in getting into studio drumming. Because LA was the place where the studio scene was. And most teachers were pretty well-known studio players. And so the draw there was that we learned to do what they were able to do. And one of the main things with that approach was sight reading. And sight reading is where you're given a piece of music and you're forced to play it with feel appropriately just on first sight of seeing it. Because when you go to a studio and you're playing somebody else's songs, they're going to give you the music generally. And you're going to play it and hopefully get the feel that they're looking for. That's not the only way that records are made, but there's a subset, especially in the commercial world or the film world, that everything is charted out and you're expected to play the charts as they're written. And the charts can be really vague or they can be very, very specific on what to play. And so our goal in school was to learn how to interpret music on the fly and do it well so that we were able to give it a feel that the person's looking for, regardless of how much information they put into that chart. And so we had a lot of different approaches we did. We'd get charts that would have virtually nothing on them and swing feel. And you're expected at that point just to match the tempo and try to interpret that by listening to what else is going on. And what'll happen if it's, say for instance, swing feel, there'll be some figures in there that you'll have to interpret as you're going that will kind of give you an idea of what your fills should look like. But the overall groove that you're playing, the rhythm you're playing is really up to you. And then there's the other side of it where it's written out details, note for note, everything you should play. The classic example of that is the Black Page from Frank Zappa. This chart was floating around when I first got to school because he was looking for a new drummer. And the chart is insane. It's one of the most difficult drum charts I've ever seen. And he's got, measure by measure broken down of what each limb should be playing, what each, instrument on the drum set should be playing, and doing some really bizarre structures that are really quite fun to play if you're able to read at that level. And I spent many hours drilling on figuring out what he was doing and how to play it. It was a little bit beyond my abilities at the time. But everybody I knew who was further along in the program, the people who started the year before I did, they were auditioning for this gig. I didn't because I just got the chart and just got to school. But there's no way I would have been able to play it. But what struck me about it is just the complexity of what was going on there. And I got really excited by the idea of being able to read these charts at this level. So sight reading became one of the main areas of focus that I really spent the majority of my energy on at school. Because, you've got your technique, you've got your ability to have four-way coordination, each limb doing something independently. That's going to come out of sight reading anyway. And so if you can sight read and you can do it with feel, you're a long way ahead of a lot of the other drummers that may be able to play with feel, but they're not going to be able to interpret a piece of music that you might get to them. So I spent a lot of time on this. And it's my favorite part of the day to practice my sight reading stuff. My least favorite time of the day was working on music theory. Music theory, percussionists are not beholden really to music theory in the same way that a guitar player or piano player is. We don't have to worry about the chord structures. We don't have to worry about the harmonies. Yes, if we're playing the xylophone or the marimba or something like that, we're playing scales and we're having to know that stuff. But we're not, especially as a drum set player, you're not really worried about what key the music is in. You're not tuning your drums to a key. You're tuning a drum to a sweet spot. It's going to sound good in the song if it's tuned to its place where it resonates the best. Just as a side note, there are a few drummers in history who have tuned their drums to the key of the song, and more power to them. I've never done it, never needed to. But regardless, music theory was something I hated doing and dreaded having to do the homework. Didn't do very well at it because it was not interesting to me. So I made a deal with myself about a third of the way into my first year, is that I would reward myself for doing the theory work with doing the sight reading, which was my favorite part of the day. So I do my theory for 30 minutes, really just work through it, do the best I can, and then I get to reward myself with 30 minutes of sight reading. And that lasted about a week. I decided pretty quickly that wasn't working for me. And so I decided that, the ADD that I am, that I would reward myself first, get myself going, get myself in gear by doing the thing that really interests me. So I've got myself engaged, and then I can do the thing that doesn't interest me. And hopefully that engagement that I got from doing what I wanted to do and what I enjoy doing will bleed over into the stuff I didn't want to do. And sure enough, it did. I noticed within a week of doing sight reading first, followed by music theory, that my grades were getting better in theory. I was understanding things better. And my teachers noticed pretty quickly as well. And really, that illustrates to me the importance of being able to get the brain engaged. Don't start with something that's going to be mundane and boring, because already now you've only got one foot in the door, especially if you have ADHD like I do. You're not going to be interested in, and you're not going to want to continue doing. Whereas if you start with something that's engaging and invigorating and you come out of it with success, you can go into the thing that's the less interesting and hopefully be able to take that momentum and carry yourself forward for a bit. That was the theory of it. And then the more I started researching into what was going on with the stimulus, with novelty, with drumming, and what I was doing with syncopation, the more I realized that there's a neurological basis for what I was doing. It is truly about getting the brain engaged. That novelty, that excitement, that unfamiliarity that breeds focusing for somebody who can't focus does help, and it does have a residual effect. It will last for a while. And that's one of the reasons when we use drumming at 9 beats per second, for instance, and I'm playing these unpredictable novel rhythms, I'm getting your brain engaged, having to work to decipher things. And once the drumming is over, your brain is still in that space of being able to try and focus. So in this exercise, what I'd like to do is play around with the idea of exactly what I did during those sight reading exercises, the particular exercises within the sight reading world that I was focusing on that really made the difference. And the number one thing that helped with being able to help me focus on other stuff afterwards was working on syncopation. Now, syncopation is basically where you take the rhythm pulse and you break it down into irregular patterns. So for instance, if I take a mambo pattern and I go like this, the notes I'm playing as loud notes are syncopated notes. Even though I'm playing one and a two and you're hearing the one with the open tone, the and the two with the open tones, and the and of two with the bass tone. And those accented notes are syncopated notes. So that's kind of what a syncopation is. As far as the syncopations go with regards to the sight reading I was doing, there was a great book from it might even be from the 60s or the 50s, Ted Reed's Syncopation, Progressive Steps to Syncopation, I think it's called. I'll have a link below to the book. It's very cool. It's basically a whole book of syncopated rhythms that you can read. And one of the pages in there, we would sections of pages, the broken eighth notes, syncopated eighth notes. We would read in all these different directions, and we'd read them as eighth notes and 16th notes. So we'd read them in 4/4 or 2/2. And just get used to reading ahead and being able to interpret and play the rhythm. But just being able to show you what a syncopated rhythm looks like, I'm just going to play it. Variable syncopated rhythms, there's no rhyme or reason to what I'm going to do here other than the fact that I don't know what I'm going to do next. Now, I can do that with reading, or I can do that just improvisation like I'll do now. And see how this feels to you. This is something you can do for yourself if you're a drummer. To play the syncopations, just break down the 16th notes. Break them up into single and double and triple notes that are random. And that will give you the syncopation that will engage your brain. The less you think about it, the better it is. So I'm going to play a little bit here for you, syncopated notes. These just as improvisation, and see what this feels like to you. So here we go. So that's an example of syncopation. If you're interested in this topic more, click the link below. I'll have a chart with some syncopated rhythms that you can read and play. This is standard musical notation. It doesn't matter what drum you play it on or how you play it. It's basically eighth note syncopations, kind of like the Ted Reed book. If you're interested in syncopations at a deeper level, definitely check out that book. It's very cool. I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely comment below telling me what you thought of the syncopation, and I'll see you in the next video.